There's a peculiar torment in being labeled gifted. Intelligence, once a badge of honor, becomes a cage, one we reinforce every time we posture, correct, or contort ourselves to meet the world's expectations of brilliance. We mistake complexity for depth, cynicism for wisdom, and exhaustion for virtue. But what if the very qualities we've been praised for, our sharpness, our skepticism, our relentless analysis, are the very walls keeping us from freedom? This video is not a rejection of intellect, but a rebellion against its tyranny. Drawing on Schopenhauer's unflinching insights, we'll explore how the mind, when weaponized against itself, becomes both jailer and prisoner. You've spent years polishing your thoughts like gems, only to find their sparkle isolates you. Every debate won, every flaw hidden, every moment spent proving your worth has cost you something irreplaceable, the unscripted joy of being human. Society will tell you that vulnerability is a liability, that humility is weakness, that silence is surrender. But Schopenhauer, that unrelenting dissector of human folly, whispers a different truth. The greatest prison is the one we build with our need to be seen as exceptional. The journey ahead is not about answers. It's about unlearning. It's about trading the brittle armor of genius for the liberating cloak of authenticity. You'll face resistance. The ego clings to its throne, but beyond its tantrums lies a world where laughter needs no punchline, where connection thrives without analysis, and where the weight of being someone dissolves into the lightness of being. The maze of overthinking has no exit, only 1,000 doors labeled surrender. Let's begin. The mind is like a maze we're all born into. Some people get so good at finding their way through it, they start to believe they'll never get lost. But that's the thing about mazes. The more confident you are, the easier it is to trap yourself. For those who've always been told they're smart, life becomes a never-ending game. Every chat turns into a chance to prove something. Every quiet moment feels like a test they're failing, unless they fill it with clever thoughts. Here's the kicker though. When being smart isn't just something you do, but who you are, it stops setting you free and starts locking you up. The sharper your mind gets, the heavier it feels, like chains you didn't even notice putting on. Schopenhauer, that relentless critic of human vanity, saw this clearly. He warned that intellect, when divorced from humility, breeds a unique form of suffering, the compulsion to prove rather than live. The smartest among us often mistake their ability to dissect life for the ability to master it. They analyze relationships as if they were equations, dissect joy into chemical reactions, and reduce suffering to mere cognitive errors. But life refuses to be solved. It can only be lived, messily, irrationally, imperfectly. The more we weaponize our intellect to control the uncontrollable, the more we become strangers to the raw, unpolished truth of existence. Psychologically, this tyranny manifests as a relentless internal critic, a voice that mistakes doubt for depth and cynicism for wisdom. It convinces us that to be wrong is to be worthless, that to admit ignorance is to surrender power. We overthink decisions, paralyzed by the fear of imperfection. We intellectualize emotions, turning grief into abstractions and love into logical puzzles. The mind, once a refuge, becomes a hall of mirrors, reflecting endless iterations of our own anxiety. This is the curse of the hyper-rational. They see so much, yet feel so little. But liberation begins with a single radical act of defiance, the willingness to stop taking the mind so seriously. Schopenhauer's philosophy, often misread as pessimistic, offers a surprising key here. He argued that the intellect is merely a servant of the will, the primal, irrational force driving all human desire. When we idolize our rationality, we declare war against our own nature. The solution is not to abandon reason, but to dethrone it, to act, at times, like a fool, to embrace simplicity, to laugh at our own pretensions, to let go of the need to be someone, and instead simply exist. Psychologically, this shift mirrors what Carl Jung called shadow work, integrating the parts of ourselves we've disowned in our quest to appear infallible. It means allowing ourselves to ask silly questions, to make mistakes publicly, to prioritize connection over correction. Studies on cognitive flexibility show that those who adopt a playful, exploratory mindset, rather than a rigidly analytical one, navigate stress more effectively and forge deeper relationships. They trade the brittle armor of intellectual superiority for the resilient grace of curiosity. Think about how light you'd feel if you didn't have to prove you're right all the time. No more scrambling for the last word. No more pretending to know things you don't. No more performing like your worth depends on being the brightest in the room. Now picture this instead. Walking through life, not like it's a puzzle you're desperate to crack, but like it's a story you get to live inside. A story where you don't have to hustle for your place, because the mystery of it all is enough. This is the first step in the hero's journey, leaving the familiar fortress of the ego to wander the uncharted wilderness of authenticity. It is terrifying, yes, but as Schopenhauer reminds us, the greatest truths are found not in triumph, but in surrender, not in the mind's ceaseless chatter, but in the quiet spaces between thoughts. The tyranny of intellect is not eternal. It fractures the moment we realize that true wisdom isn't about having all the answers. It's about learning to sit with the questions, and sometimes to dance with them. There's a quiet rebellion in asking a question you already know the answer to, in laughing at a joke everyone else dissects, in saying, "I don't know," when you do know, but choose not to weaponize it. This is strategic naivety, the art of disarming the world's expectations by playing the fool, not out of ignorance, but out of liberation. It's not about dumbing yourself down. It's about rising above the exhausting game of intellectual one-upmanship, where the only prize is a loneliness masked as respect. Imagine walking into a room and deciding, just once, not to be the person who has to fix, explain, or outthink everyone else. Imagine sitting through a heated debate without jumping in to set the record straight, or listening to someone's half-baked thought and not feeling that twitch in your fingers to fix it. Schopenhauer, that old philosopher who saw right through people's BS, put it best. Real wisdom looks kinda crazy to people who've spent too much time in their own heads. Because when you stop trying to sound like the smartest person alive, you start noticing how exhausting that game actually was. Why? Because the world rewards complexity but craves authenticity. Every time you drop the act of needing to seem brilliant, you create space for something far more subversive: connection. Psychologically, this is a masterclass in ego dissolution. Studies show that people who embrace humility, who admit gaps in their knowledge or laugh at their own mistakes, are perceived as more trustworthy, more likable, even more competent. It's as if the act of unclenching your intellect signals to others, you don't have to perform here either. This isn't manipulation, it's an invitation. By strategically playing naive, you disrupt the unspoken rules of social gamesmanship. You become a mirror, reflecting back the absurdity of a culture that conflates being right with being worthy. But there's a deeper, almost radical freedom here. Schopenhauer argued that the will, the primal force behind our desires, thrives on struggle and domination. When you stop feeding it with intellectual conquests, you starve it. Think of strategic naivety as fasting for the soul. It's refusing to let your mind be a weapon. It's choosing wonder over winning, curiosity over conquest. A colleague once told me about a CEO who'd asked junior employees with genuine openness, "What would you do if you were me?" Not to test them, but to learn. His naive questions unlocked ideas no one else dared share. That's the secret. When you stop performing genius, you start accessing it. This isn't about self-erasure. It's about rewiring what power looks like. The hero in any great story doesn't triumph by flexing their strengths. They win by embracing their vulnerabilities. Frodo doesn't defeat Sauron by being the strongest. He does it by being the most overlooked. In your own life, strategic naivety is the cloak that lets you move unseen through a world obsessed with visibility. It's the relief of no longer treating every conversation as a battleground. Will people call you naive? Maybe, but let them. The greatest thinkers, from Socrates feigning ignorance to Zen masters speaking in riddles, have always hidden their depth in plain sight. They understood that sometimes the smartest thing you can do is let others underestimate you. It gives you room to breathe, to observe, to be. So try it today. Ask a simple question. Let someone else take credit. Laugh at a dumb joke without dissecting why it's funny. Notice how the world softens when you do. Chains you didn't even feel begin to rust. The maze of the mind is easier to navigate when you're not trying so damn hard to prove you belong in it. You know that feeling when you walk into a party and immediately scan the room to see who's watching? Or when you post something online and check back every 5 minutes, like your worth is tied to a number on a screen? That's the hunger for social validation, a craving so primal it can turn the most independent mind into a puppet. We dress it up as fitting in or being liked, but deep down, it's a fear of disappearing if we're not seen, praised, or envied. Schopenhauer called this the bondage of opinion, a leash we willingly wear because we've forgotten how to walk without it. The truth is, needing validation is exhausting. It's like holding up a mirror all day, turning it just right so everyone likes what they see. You change what you think to fit in, laugh extra hard at jokes even when they're not that funny, and agree with stuff you don't really care about, all for that quick fix of feeling like you belong. But here's the kicker. The harder you try to be liked, the less you actually recognize yourself. You're so busy being what others want that you forget who you even are. Psychologists call this self-alienation, a fancy term for the hollow ache of realizing you've become a stranger in your own life. You're performing a version of yourself that's palatable, polished, and utterly lifeless. Schopenhauer, ever the provocateur, argued that social validation is a trap dressed as a reward. He believed society thrives on conformity, punishing those who dare to exist outside its script. From schoolyard cliques to corporate ladder climbing, we're trained to equate visibility with value. But what if the real rebellion isn't in shouting louder, but in stepping off the stage entirely? What if freedom isn't about being admired, but about being unseen on your own terms? This isn't about becoming a hermit. It's about rewiring your relationship with attention. Studies show that people who derive self-worth from internal values, rather than external praise, experience less anxiety and deeper relationships. They're the ones who can disagree calmly, love fiercely, and walk away from toxic situations without begging for closure. Why? Because their sense of enough doesn't hinge on someone else's applause. To get there, you have to confront the fear that's been driving you, the terror of irrelevance. Schopenhauer's remedy was brutal but liberating. Stop treating your life like a performance. The world doesn't need another actor playing a role. It needs the real, messy you. Here's a trick. Next time you catch yourself bending over backward to make others happy, stop and ask, who's this actually about? If it's not about you, hold your breath for a second. Let that quiet moment hang in the air, even if it feels awkward. That's your gut telling you something's off. That discomfort is the sound of old chains breaking. You'll feel naked at first, without the armor of others' approval. Every choice becomes yours to own. But that's where the magic happens. Imagine wearing clothes you actually like, not just what's trending, or saying no without apologizing, or creating something messy and imperfect just because it brings you joy. This is emancipation, trading the prison of what will they think for the wilderness of what do I feel. It won't make you popular. In fact, some people will resent you for it, not because you've changed, but because your freedom mirrors their own captivity. But slowly, you'll notice a shift. The weight of others' expectations starts to slip away, like sand through open fingers. You'll meet people who like you for your rough edges, not your polished mask. And when you stumble, you'll find a resilience you never knew you had, because your worth isn't outsourced anymore. It's rooted. We've all been sold a lie, that being strong means never letting them see you sweat. That to be in control, you've got to act like you've got it all figured out 24/7. But here's the truth, nobody tells you. Real power isn't about hiding your cracks. It's about letting the light shine through them. It's saying, I'm lost, when everyone expects you to have a map. It's laughing at your own mistakes instead of spinning them into excuses. Schopenhauer, that grumpy old genius, knew this better than anyone. The more you try to bury your messy humanity, the more it owns you. But when you drag it into the open, That's when you turn weakness into a weapon. Think about the last time someone shocked you by being real. Maybe a coworker admitted they were clueless in a meeting, or a friend texted, "I'm not okay," out of the blue. Didn't it hit you right in the chest? Make you want to hug them or buy them coffee? That's the magic of dropping the act. Science even backs this up. We're hardwired to trust people who don't pretend to be perfect. When you say, "I screwed up," instead of blaming the universe, you're not losing respect. You're earning it. Because suddenly, you're not a statue, you're a person. But let's be clear, this isn't about trauma dumping on strangers or fishing for pity. It's about picking your moments. It's saying, "This hurt, but here's how I'm healing," instead of just, "Look how broken I am." Schopenhauer's big idea was that we're all slaves to this invisible force he called the will. This nagging voice that screams, "Prove yourself, hide your flaws, never let them see you blink." But when you flip the script and say, "Nah, I'm good," you take the wind out of its sails. You stop wasting energy on keeping up appearances and start spending it on living. You know those old coffee mugs that get cracked but glued back together with gold. There's a whole art to that. They don't hide the breaks, they make them part of the story. That's you. Your doubts, your awkward phases, the times you bombed hard, those aren't stains on your resume. They're proof you showed up. And when you stop airbrushing them out, something wild happens. People stop comparing themselves to you and start seeing themselves in you. Sound crazy? Maybe. We're taught that vulnerability is for losers. But think about wolves for a sec. When a wolf rolls over and shows its belly, it's not giving up. It's saying, "I trust you." That's how you turn rivals into allies. Bosses who say, "Hey, I don't know. What do you think?" Don't look weak. They unlock ideas their team was too scared to share. Love someone who's always playing it cool? Try being the first to say, "I miss you," and watch how the game changes. This is the hero move nobody talks about. Coming home from the battle not with trophies, but with your scars on display. Not as a hero on a high horse, but as someone who's been through it and still believes in tomorrow. Schopenhauer's fool isn't a punchline. They're the one holding up a mirror to a world obsessed with filters. So go ahead. Send that text without rehearsing it 6 times. Raise your hand and say, "Can you explain that again?" Cry in front of someone. You'll feel naked for a minute. But then you'll notice something. The people who matter don't look away. They step closer. Mastery through vulnerability isn't about having a perfect life. It's about standing in the storm, soaked to the bone, and grinning because you're finally here. Alive, flawed, free. The world will keep its games. Let it. You've learned a harder, richer truth. That freedom isn't won by outthinking life, but by refusing to play its most insidious game. The one where you're both competitor and hostage. Schopenhauer's genius was his refusal to romanticize existence. He saw the world as a storm of desire and disappointment, yet within that storm, he spotted an escape hatch. The audacity to stop taking yourself, your ideas, your image, your need to matter so damn seriously. To act, at times, like a fool. Not as a gag, but as a revolt. This isn't an ending. It's a beginning. The old habits will whisper, urging you to reclaim your armor, to weaponize your wit, to shrink back into the familiar ache of performance. But now you know the cost. Every time you trade presence for approval, you lose a fragment of the only thing that truly matters. Your unedited, unapologetic self. So let them misunderstand you. Let them mistake your stillness for ignorance or your laughter for naivety. While others chase the flickering spotlight of validation, you'll be elsewhere, savoring the taste of an unanalyzed moment, holding hands without dissecting motives, breathing in a world that no longer demands your constant critique. Schopenhauer's fool was never a punchline. They were the quiet revolutionary who understood that the greatest act of defiance is to exist without apology, to stop explaining, to stop hiding, to stop trying. The maze remains, but you're no longer lost in it. You're dancing through it, imperfect, unguarded, free. So, waste no more time with the mind's self-criticism. Embrace the wisdom of the fool. You never know where it'll take you.